Good day everyone, my name is Zandreu Philippe Rulida and I am reporting Cacique, Democracy in the Philippines. So as shown in the presentation, these are the contents in my report. So the first part is the introduction, the state. This is composed of the timeline of the major happenings during the formation of government in the Philippines. The first timeline is the prehistoric Philippines or the pre-colonial Philippines. The prehistoric Philippines was mainly composed of the government called barangay, which is primarily ruled by the chieftain. Their government was quite simple. All will follow one appointed to as a leader. The second one is the colonization of Spaniards. The colonization of Spaniards introduced a new form of government to early Filipinos, which is the centralized colonial government. Many exercised legislative and judicial powers. The Spaniards colonized Philippines for 333 years, still practicing such government system. The first U.S. colonization introduced another form of government, which is the insular government. Then, the Americans implemented the Organic Law, an act of the United States Congress that establishes territory of the United States that specifies how it is to be governed, like the Philippines. Foundation of the Commonwealth Government in 1935. It replaced the insular government. The Commonwealth was designed as transition administration in preparation for the country's full achievement of independence. So the Philippines can now govern by its state, by itself, and not with colonizers. The Japanese colonization in 1943 to 1945. This was the time when the Second Republic was introduced. As the Japanese colonized Philippines, it used the unitary one-party authoritarian republic, which is a one-party system, meaning one political party exists and the forming other political parties is forbidden. This marks the starting of a solidified state in the Philippines. It provided a recognition of independence of the Republic of the Philippines as of July 4, 1946, and the relinquishment of American sovereignty in the Philippine Islands. Although with the prospects of nationhood and self-rule were not exactly convivial, it was a sign that the Philippines is a free country. The Marcos era / the Fourth Republic of the Philippines. During his whole presidency, Ferdinand Marcos imposed two types of government. First is the unitary presidential constitutional republic in 1965 to 1972, meaning the President of the Philippines acting as both head of state and head of government. Second is the unitary semi-presidential dominant party republic under a totalitarian conjugal dictatorship in 1972 to 1986. This was the time he declared martial law and practiced dictatorship as well as being president. The Fourth Republic of the Philippines, the new republic under 1973 Constitution, is inaugurated. Marcos is sworn for the third time as president. The finance minister Cesar Villita is elected prime minister by Batasang Pamansa. The Proclamation 2045 lifts the proclamation of martial law but still retains many of its powers due to the Amendment 6 to the 1973 Constitution. The Fifth Republic of the Philippines. With the People Power Revolution, Corazon Aquino's assumption into power marked the restoration of democracy in the country. Aquino immediately formed a revolutionary government to normalize the situation and provided a transitional freedom constitution that restored civil liberties and dismantled the heavy Marcos ingrainment bureaucracy. The political system of the Philippines. In theory than in practice, the Philippines was effectively following a US type of government, although as unitary than federal state. The tres politica, or the separation of powers between executive, the legislature, and the judiciary was observed. The evolution of Philippine Constitution. So there are five evolutions of Philippine Constitution, namely, first, the 1899 Constitution, also known as the Malolos Constitution. The second one, the 1935 Constitution during the Commonwealth government. Third, the 1947 Constitution during the Japanese colonization. The fourth, the 1973 Constitution during the Marcos era. The fifth and last is the 1987 Constitution. Public administration in the Philippines. Today's public administration is simply the product of the colonial era. It is the composite blending of influences of past practices and processes derived from colonial times and at the same time made to apply the oddity of Filipino values and norms. The American system has been somewhat the dominant influence insofar as the system, rules, structures, and formalities are concerned. The Cacique democracy in the Philippines. So, what is the word Cacique? It is a term to describe the feudal political system of the Philippines, whereas many parts of the country local leaders remain very strong with almost warlord type powers. So, question, why is the Philippines called Cacique democracy? Who was involved in the democracy? What did they do to maintain power? So, after Marcos' dictatorship, the Aquino administration finally took over. Here's the origin of the political dynasties. Among them are the Aquinos and Coangcos, which make the Filipino politics so spectacularly different from those of any other country in Southeast Asia, which is the start of the Cacique democracy. The Aquino administration was so powerful enough to practice flawed democracy. They observed power in the government by the use of democracy. We are finally free, Aquino declared at the time. The long agony is over. She was honored around the world. But in the years of her presidency, little went right for her as moral strength failed to translate into the sufficient political awareness to tackle the huge problems in the Philippines. When Cory Aquino stepped down after 6 years as the first woman president in the Philippines, she was widely viewed as having a little impact on her country's deep-rooted social and economic problems. The moment of her departure from the presidency was a low point in her brief yet quite remarkable political career, living as she did in atmosphere and disenchantment and realized hopes. Yet, overall, she left a mark in the history of her troubled country. The present democratic government, effective or not, a statement was once said, "It is clear to me that the Philippine democracy has turned into a government of oligarchs, a condition that may have turned into despotism as anticipated by Plato. It happened before, during the time of Marcos." It is stated by Benjamin R. Punong Bayan. The definition of democracy is becoming unclear due to the fact that the people's power is not practiced very well. Moreover, these voters are easily influenced and swayed by strong local leaders and to support these leaders' choices, enhanced by vote buying. Vote buying, the other cause of improper expression of people's sovereignty. We are not democracy today. We are under an oligarchical rule. With this consequent unchecked abuse of power and promotion of self-interest, the inevitable effects of limiting the sustainability of political and economic growth and development. Finally, the conclusion. This report has briefly presented the history, evolution, and context of the development of public administration practice and politics in the Philippines. It has endeavored to present a discussion of the shaping of the Philippine bureaucracy and the various influences that guide it into its present form. From the pre-colonial era to the colonial periods to the present. The prevailing values and norms practiced in the bureaucracy, the Philippines, and the forces that shape into becoming the institution it has today. So this is the end of my presentation, and I hope you are safe, and thank you very much for listening. God bless.